Hello, everyone. Welcome to Helmer's Movie Mania podcast. I'm your host, Alex Helmer, bring you more cinema-related content. Today we have a special show for you guys. As you can see by the black and white filter, it's another episode of Talkin Classics. Now, before we get to my guest as well as the list, let me just go over and say, if you haven't already, like the video, subscribe, hit that bell icon to get notified on all our latest cinema-related content. Now, with me today is my guest host. It's not Jack Darnell today. It's going to be a new guest host. He is the host of the Cineflek podcast. It is Ethan Colburn. Ethan, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you? It's great to be on your show.
Awesome. Yeah, great to have you. So I've seen a couple of your episodes now. They're extremely fun. You have a movie every week. You make a new drink every week. I can see you're having one right now. But it's a really fun show. It's one of my highlights of my week.
Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. It's been really fun to record.
Oh no, it's a real because I'm very picky about the film podcasts that I watch. For like 3 years I only watched John Campia. That's like the only podcast I watch. And then I started watching yours. I was like, okay, I guess I have to spend more time watching some more movie podcasts. Yeah,
for sure. There's a lot of great podcasts out there.
Yeah. And so like I said, it's another episode of Talkin Classics. And so we're going to do top 5 40s films. Last week we did an episode of top 5 50s films, and 50s is personally my favorite decade in film, and the 40s definitely close to that. 40s to 60s is what I consider to be where it's covering 30 years, so if you can call that the peak of cinema. But yeah, the 40s is definitely up there. Why do you think the 40s is so special and such a special decade in film?
Well, I mean, I can talk about, first of all, it holds a special place in my heart just because I've talked about this on my podcast, but I used to work at this sort of nonprofit theater that would show classic movies all the time.
Oh, and that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. It was really, really cool. And so I mean, still to this day, I mean, obviously right now the theater's shut down because of COVID, but I mean, still to this day they'll just let me in for free.
That's awesome.
I just sort of pop in. And like it was a great opportunity to see some of these classic films that I'll list off in the top 5. Can we get to that just like on the big screen? And it really brought them to life in a way that it's sort of hard to watch when you're at home. I think the 40s is really where Hollywood sort of found its flow, if that makes sense. Like if you watch stuff from the 30s, they haven't quite figured out how to use
30s is actually maybe my least favorite decade. There are a lot of technical problems.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. And then also just like I think in the 20s they were really using the camera creatively.
Yeah.
And because they introduced this new medium of sound, they sort of relied on it too heavily at first, and then they learned how to incorporate the filmmaking style that they had from the silent era into a sort of a sound era and get more creative with it. But yeah, I mean, I adore the 40s. The one thing I wanted to talk to you about as well, I hope I'm not getting too far ahead of myself, is just that I was surprised how few porn movies I found on this list. And it's just because
I couldn't agree more.
It's just because the world was in such chaos, and the US was one of the only places in the world that didn't have a war happening domestically.
Yeah,
so
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I mean, we're primarily going to be talking about Hollywood movies, I'm assuming.
Let's start off with our honorable mentions. So what are your honorable mentions? Films that did not make your list, unfortunately.
Oh man, I like, how many honorable mentions am I allowed to name?
Don't worry, I have a huge list myself. I mean, I had a really hard time making this list.
Okay. So yeah, so I narrowed it down to 5, but I mean, like, I just wrote down I wrote down a bunch of movies that I love. So Fantasia, number 1. I mean, not number 1 on my list. Number 1 in honorable mentions. I adore that movie, and it's just like it's one of the most creative things Disney's ever put out. The Red Shoes. I don't know if you've ever.
Oh, I've not. I just got into Michael Powell and Preston Burger.
Oh yeah, they're awesome. All the Michael Powell, Pressburger stuff. Yeah. I was thinking about, Red Shoes, Black Narcissus.
My favorite is Peeping. I've seen Peeping Tom and Black Narcissus. Yeah. Peeping Tom, obviously, that was in the 60s, but
yeah, Peeping Tom is fantastic. I love that film. Yeah. The Third Man, I'm obsessed with. Philadelphia Story, Arsenic and Old Lace. I don't have any
Okay.
Cary Grant comedies on my list, but I love Cary Grant comedies. If you want to go a little more like indie horror, Cat People is just spectacular.
Oh, Cat People's a fun movie. Yeah.
And then all the Bogart noirs.
Yeah. So my honorable mentions. Yeah, I definitely had some of those that you mentioned. One of them, And Then There Are None, which is an underseen Agatha Christie inspired murder mystery, and then The Ghost and Mrs. Murr. I am obsessed with Joseph L. Mankiewicz. I got it like a month ago, and I haven't seen All About Eve yet. I'm saving that to be the last Mankiewicz film I watch, because I want like a grand finale. But I am obsessed with J-Man. I really love him.
Oh yeah, he's great. Fantastic.
Yeah. The Miracle on 34th Street. The Big Sleep, which you mentioned. Big Sleep. I would be lying if I didn't tell you I had like a Wikipedia plot analysis with me, because there are a lot of moving pieces.
It's famously one of the most confusing scripts of all time. Yeah. Like, I know someone that's seen it 40 times, and he, like, the last time he saw it, he noticed, he was like, wait, does that mean that this character was actually here when something happened?
It got to the point, because I had to rewind several times. Again, I was looking on Wikipedia, so I think while I was watching it, I got used to it. I knew the characters' names, like, maybe halfway through. I was like, okay, this is this. But The Shop Around the Corner, Casablanca, of course. People are gonna kill me for not having Casablanca on my list, but Brief Encounter, another David Lean masterpiece.
I'm obsessed with Brief Encounter. Yeah.
And then my last one's gonna be Yankee Doodle Dandy. I'm in love with James Cagney. I love his work, so that is my final honorable mention. So Ethan, what are your 5 and your number 4?
Okay, my number 5 is Mildred Pierce.
Oh, okay.
I saw this only for the first time recently. Joan Crawford just like makes a crazy comeback with this, you know, like she was pretty.
I love Joan Crawford.
She was kind of on the way out with her career, and then she just like drops this like crazy kind of noir-esque. It's not. I don't think it's technically noir, but it's got like elements of that style, and yeah, I just think it's like dark and gritty, and I love like her weird relationship with her daughter, and it's so great.
Oh my!
I mean, you hate the daughter, but you love to hate the daughter. Yeah. My number 4 is Citizen Kane.
Okay.
So I mean, you know, if we're talking about like most impactful movies of the 40s, I'd have to put it at number 1. Just, I mean, I think the 3 movies ahead of it just hold a slightly closer place in my heart. But like, I mean, gosh, I rewatched Citizen Kane again before I saw Mank, and oh my god, like just the camera, just like the camera work he does in that. I mean, just he was the first person to put like ceilings on his sets so he could shoot the characters from below.
Yeah.
I mean, he's like 26 or 24, and like just absolutely slaying it. Like I'm so blown away every time I see that movie, and I think it's become such a cliche that it's the best movie of all time. But like, you watch it and you're like, I can't really disagree. It's that good.
So my number 5 is going to be Treasure of the Sierra Madre. So this is actually one of the first.
Bogey.
This is probably the second Bogart film I saw after Casablanca, or like my first after Casablanca. And this is probably his most villainous role. Like, he plays a straight up, just villain. And it starts off kind of being an anti-hero, but then he just like goes straight downhill.
Yeah,
and
totally.
It's one of his best performances, in my opinion. The supporting cast, Walter Houston is an incredibly underrated actor.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
Really, especially in Yankee Doodle Dandy, but in this film he's also really good. And so I can't remember the name of the third actor who's in it, but they're the trio that they formed. I was just on my toes the entire time. The film never kind of tells you who to trust. You're just supposed to, you're thrown in there, and you just kind of have to pick and choose which moments and which characters you trust. So that is my number 5.
Yeah, Walter Houston is awesome.
Oh yeah.
If you want more villainous Bogart, I really recommend In a Lonely Place from the 50s.
I've seen it. I love In a Lonely Place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just villainous Bogart is a great.
Talk about keeping you on your toes, man.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Totally.
And then my number 4 is going to be Mildred Pierce, which you already mentioned.
Yes.
But I am an avid Mildred Pierce lover. That film it's rare that you find a feminism film this early in cinematic history, but Mildred Pierce is one, and it does it very subtly. There's not a lot of exposition in the film. But the film is a feminism film in the sense that it doesn't tell you that it's a feminism film, but it is. And it's very powerful in that sense, in my opinion. And Joan Crawford gives maybe her best performance. She's amazing. Yeah, the cinematography is great. The score. So the ending is extremely powerful. It's just, of course, Joan Crawford's her narration in the film is really powerful. So that is my number 4.
All right. My number 3 is It's a Wonderful Life.
Of course. Yeah.
I did this one again on the podcast. And speaking of the theater I used to work at, they used to do a big Christmas Eve show every year. It's this big like 1,200 seat theater, and every year on Christmas Eve we'd sell it out. Like we'd sell out a few weeks in advance, pack it. And so I just have like great memories seeing this movie. And then also I watched this like a couple months ago for Christmas again, and I cry sometimes at movies, but like I'll start to tear up. This movie, I was straight up ugly crying. Like I was straight up like sobbing in my girlfriend's arms. Like it was it was like intense. The ending just gets me, and I think it's peak Frank Capra magic. It's just like pure good. I adore it. I love this movie.
Oh yeah. And what is your number 2?
My number 2, I actually think the next 2 you don't have on your list. My number 2 is A Brief Encounter.
Okay,
which,
yeah.
I'm like a massive romantic, and that movie's just like, it's so romantic. It's painfully romantic. It's it's a beautiful, beautiful movie. I like the way they incorporate the Rachmaninoff score into it. Mm-hmm. Like one of my favorite directors, Robert Altman, was really influenced by seeing this, because it's two kind of like ordinary looking people. They're not
exactly.
They're not like massive Hollywood stars, but they're like ordinary looking people who meet at a train station, and it's just. It's really interesting because it's early David Lean, and it's so different from like the big like Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago things he do later in his career. It's a small, contained character study, and it's just gorgeous.
My friend Jack, he was on the last Talkin Classic episode. Mm-hmm. I watched Brief Encounter before him, and he only watches like pre-70s cinema. And so I told him, dude, you have to watch Brief Encounter. He's like, okay, fine, I'll watch it. So he watched it. And he's like, yeah, I watched it. I said, how are you feeling about it? And he said, I love the film, but I just couldn't concentrate on it because I couldn't stop staring at her eyes. Like the woman leading that film, said, I couldn't stop staring at her eyes because her eyes were just told so much. I was like, okay, dude, I definitely agree. But
I love that. It's pretty funny.
Yes. So my number 3 is going to be Rope. So Rope is actually one of my favorite Hitchcock films. I feel it's extremely underappreciated. Although a lot of people love it. Like I just think that film's a total masterpiece. One location films is something I'm very passionate about, especially because I appreciate them so much. And there's something that they're so practical, especially for amateur filmmakers like me who don't have the biggest budgets, absolutely. And I just think it takes a lot of filmmaking talent to, explore one place with the same characters within 2 hours. And so Hitchcock he's just this is 1948, and he does something that 1917 explored, in 2019. I mean, film is all it's supposed to be, the one continuous shot. And Hitchcock does that so well. Jimmy Stewart, this is by far, he's straight up narcissistic in this film. Some of the stuff he says, straight up, you're like, this is the same guy who was in It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. The film is extremely tense, and it's also really, there's a lot of dark comedy in there. Hitchcock is not a lot of people appreciate his dark comedy, but there's a lot in this film. So that is my number 3.
Oh yeah, he's got a lot of humor in his work. Yeah.
And then my number 2 is going to be It's a Wonderful Life, which you promptly mentioned. I can't imagine not having It's a Wonderful Life on your top 5 40s list.
For sure.
I can't imagine anybody not liking It's a Wonderful Life. at all. I mean, it's an amazing. I saw it again recently, near Christmas time, and it's just it is such a good film. The dialogue in that film, there's so many memorable lines. It's Jimmy Stewart, his line delivery in terms of his comedy, like it's great in Rear Window as well, but in It's a Wonderful Life, it's amazing. His line delivery is so good. Of course, you have the moon line, I'll give you such a power. And then of course the ending. And I'm a sucker for like big ensemble casts. And so the ending of this film, it has such a neighborhood feel, such a communal type feel that really just got to me. I will say one of the biggest cinema sins that I've done is when I first watched It's a Wonderful Life 2 years ago, I watched the in color version.
Oh yeah.
I watched it in my first. What are you doing? Why did you do that? And I was like, well, what are you talking about? I just, they're like, no, that's not the right version. And then I went back and watched the black and white version. I'm just like, yeah, it's just so much better.
Yeah, it's totally true. It's so weird. I was noticing that like Amazon Prime just defaults to the color version unless you seek out the black and white version. And it's just, I was ranting about this on my It's a Wonderful Life podcast. I was like, you can't. I mean, Frank Capra didn't even approve of the color version, but now people are just seeing the color version because they think that's the version you should. It's ridiculous. Please seek out the black and white version.
They did the same thing.
Appreciate cinema.
I saw parts of the Casablanca. I just saw on YouTube the Casablanca color version. It is horrific.
Oh no.
So, what is your number one?
My number one, unless we're sharing a number one, you have not yet talked about it. My number one is Sullivan's Travels.
Okay, I've seen Sullivan's Travels. Okay,
I am obsessed with Sullivan's Travels.
Okay.
I realized that like I've realized recently that all my favorite movies are either about like are like either really romantic or about people finding themselves and finding like their way to live. And this movie just falls into both categories. It's so like it's got a great story with like Joel McCrea meeting Veronica Lake, who is fantastic in this. And then I just love the idea of him. So basically he's a director that wants to like live like a poor person. So he goes and starts traveling around and then actually gets into some trouble and actually experiences like a bit of what poverty's like. And it's just so beautiful. It's so beautifully done. Preston Sturges is a master at just like writing dialogue, and people don't realize like how many people he influenced, how ahead of his time Preston Sturges really just had this time from like 1941 to 1946 where he was slaying things and then didn't really do much else. But I mean, I'm just obsessed with Sullivan's Travels. It holds a really special place in my heart.
I'm not too big a fan of Sullivan's Travels. I'm sorry I had to admit that too.
Oh, good.
I do really like the Lady Eve.
Lady Eve's also great. Yeah.
I'm a huge Henry Fonda fan and Barbara Stanwyck. I love them both. Yeah. But I definitely I have friends who love Sullivan's Travels. So good pick. So I'm very passionate about my number one. My number one, when I first saw it, I was blown away. I was just in awe the entire time. My number one is White Heat.
Ooh.
1949 classic, James Cagney. And oh my God, is White Heat a masterpiece. I love that film to death. Oh my God, it's so good. James Cagney he's basically like Tommy DeVito in Goodfellas before Joe Pesci's time, 40 years before. And so yeah, the film is so good. It's so intense. You have a big ensemble cast. You have so many moving pieces. Like Treasure of the Sierra Madre, you don't know who to trust really. You have James Cagney's mom in this film, like not his real, like his character's mom. And even she's a badass, and she's like 80 years old. You have you don't know how to trust. You have his wife, you have his best friends, you have the people he meets in prison, and it's just a tremendous film. The cinematography is great. The score, Raoul Walsh, his direction, the editing is superb. And then of course it has more, I don't know if it's my favorite last line in all of cinema, but it's definitely up there. The last line is it's really, really impactful. And it really I left with a smile on my face. The climax is so good. It's a masterpiece. It's 49, but it's just so much better than a lot of action movies. No, not to throw any shade at action movies we got today, but White Heat is just of a different breed, you know.
Wow. I mean, I'm embarrassed to say, like, I've seen every movie you mentioned except for your number
You
one.
haven't?
So
Okay, I love Cagney musicals, and so I've seen two. I have Angels with Dirty Faces on DVD. I had because it's not available anywhere else, so I have to see that. And then TCM is broadcasting. The other Cagney. I'm forgetting the Roaring Twenties. Another Cagney, and I haven't seen that either. But
Bogey in that one too. I think Bogart's in that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everyone watching, please let us know in the comments below. What are your favorite 40s films? Did we miss out on any? Please let us know. So, Ethan, where can everyone find you?
If you're interested, if you're on Letterboxd, just look up Ethan Colburn on Letterboxd. I'm there. At Cineflek Pod on Instagram. You can search for Cineflek anywhere you get podcasts. That's CINEFLEK, Cineflek. Thanks for having me on, Alex. It's been fun.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, and if you guys haven't already, please like the video, subscribe, ring that bell icon to get notified on all our latest cinema-related content. Ciao.